Hello and welcome to Lands Unknown live. My name is Will, and on this Canada Day weekend, I've got my Wet'suwet'en Solidarity sweater, and I've got my anti-monarchy t-shirt on in the spirit. So let's get ready to go. Oh, and I also have some Little Wolf coffee in my little Lands Unknown mug. Very nice Ethiopian coffee. It's quite good. And today we're going to keep working on the Paleolithic culture building of the ancient ancestral Zaaleans. And oh yes, let's go. Hello, Soup Crime, and hello, Kate. I'm going to be sort of going over a bit of a process, like a workflow, I suppose, as a methodology for generating culture. And well, just like a methodology for like working through the process of creating culture. And as a part of that, I am going to introduce folks to Anthropium. I don't know how to say it any other way. Which is a game online that you can play, which I have been quite good at. The thumbnail looks great. Thank you. Let's go down there. Yes, I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. And I can talk more about it as we go through the process and the choices I made with the different material elements that went into her outfit here. And we've got the little domesticated or semi-domesticated, was it Couron orange griffin right beside her. Just a girl and her griffin dog, which doesn't have a brood pouch. So just two gals looking over the like mixed sort of savanna landscape, right? We've got trees, we've got shrub, we got grasslands. I think it does a really good job of kind of illustrating what Dove's landscape looks like as well. And a dig, you have to let me know. If you're comfortable, you can share where you did your dig. That'd be super cool. Auroral Anomaly, hello. And hi, Matthew's awesome. Just to start off, to kind of set up why I would recommend doing Anthropium, we have, what was it? I'm using Obsidian now. I had to switch from Evernote because they jacked up the price. Went from $80, I think $89 Canadian for unlimited notes and all that stuff to, what was it, like $300, which is an absurd markup. They were like, oh, we're adding new features and things, but I think more and more of it was just AI nonsense that kind of got in the way of all of that stuff. Hello, Jake. You can watch me do Anthropium today. If you planned on doing Anthropium, then I recommend that you work on it before I get to it. And no spoilers. It's very important. Lion formation. Wow. Yeah, I can see that. It's very cool. Oh, Kabuli Palau. That's excellent. What did you choose for the meat there? Because you're gonna have raisins and carrots and stuff like that. But I think the meat choice really separates the Kabuli Palau. Plants versus zombies. Hey, that's fair. Zombie plants. Lamb is a good choice. Lamb is definitely where it's at. All right, so okay, we're gonna have the method in here, and then I'm going to separate the actual AAZ culture building stuff. So for the method, the first thing, which I feel is important when you're starting, is to collect your references. And I've been doing more art recently. That's a part of why I started doing Dove, to kind of have a project to channel artistic stuff into. Um, but doing, but the first thing you want to start with when you're thinking about culture building is gathering up your references. You want good materials that can help you um, build your culture. If you're starting with poor references, then your output isn't going to be as evocative or as interesting. As a metaphor, if you wanted to make, a very simple, like, pasta with red sauce, if you used out of season, like beefsteak tomatoes for the sauce, if you use dried parsley that's been at the back of your spice and herb cabinet for 2 years, if you use, I don't know, like some of the mass produced pasta that goes through, I don't know, like one of those steel cutting machines. Um, you're going to have a very different pasta than if you used one with like San Marino tomatoes, or like cherry tomatoes are always a good option if you're out of season. Bronze cut pasta made of durum wheat. Um, and what was the other thing? And parsley, like fresh parsley, right? Or more recent dried parsley. So if you're if you start with better ingredients, even if you're making the same dish, even if you're making the same kind of culture, it's going to come out and show in the kind of nuances and details that you get into. A lot of the references that I see, especially when people are starting out, usually comes from media, right? It's what media presents as some semblance of cultures or time periods that's based off, right? So if, when I was younger, when I started world building in high school for like stories or role playing games, that was something I did. Like I watched, like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, and I read a lot of fantasy books and stuff like that. So my idea of the medieval period was filtered through a lot of this fiction, right? This genre fiction. Um, and uh, my dad read the original Lord of the Rings to me, and it wasn't until in my undergrad when I did medieval studies that I returned to Lord of the Rings and saw like how much Tolkien was truly, capturing his work as a medievalist in the world. I just need to change something on this here because it's making all sorts of noises. There we go. That should help. Yeah, and it can really improve what you're working with. And when I'm thinking of references, you can. I could be typing this while I'm doing it. So like, I think that fiction can be useful, especially when it's good for inspiring the worlds that you build, right? Like you can encounter a piece of genre fiction and they do something really interesting with culture. Like they have a really cool piece of world building, and that can be really inspiring. That's the sort of thing I would go to genre fiction for. But if you want to build a medieval world, you would want to, you know, go to some of the literature. You can even find like literature that is written for a public audience, like books written for a public audience by experts. So a recent one that came out, I think it was a couple years ago, is called The Bright Ages. And that's by two medievalists who are trying to counter this idea in the popular narrative that, the medieval period is a dark age. And they include, I think, I think it's a dozen different examples of how the medieval period was bright. They talk about architecture, they talk about ideas, they talk about all sorts of things. Um, and this can be really cool because when we look at a lot of media about the medieval period or trying to reflect some part of the medieval period, usually it's like pseudo medieval, um, like Game of Thrones or something, where they depict everybody wearing like brown and beige and stuff. But when you look at artistic depictions of the medieval period or medieval clothing that we still have, even among poorer people, it's brightly colored in all sorts of colors. Um, and so, looking at that, you are able to, adjust your view of who these people are and really treat them as people, rather than extras on a set who are kind of depicting uh, expectations from like the language of film. Um, and when we think of the, political structures, this has been, something I've talked about briefly before, but during large portions of the medieval period, uh, aristocrats did not inherit titles to administrative offices, right? So uh, this was something that emerged as more centralized and more concentrated polities began to weaken, where originally, like for the Carolingians, as an example, the king would appoint, what are they called? Comes, counts, essentially, from the aristocrats, right? So a count was an office which had administrative and military responsibilities, and they would be appointed, from the pool of aristocrats that existed, and they were usually appointed to administrate a place where they did not live, to separate their base of support from their job. But as these powers weakened, the central powers weakened, the position of the count, this office, became inherited and it shifted to a title. And this is what we see happening in South Asia with the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughals. So the development of that kind of system in South Asia. We also see it in Japan in the 14th and 15th century. So like when you start having the Sengoku period is when you have a shift from the shogun appointed shugo, and shugo were the whatchamacallits. They were the offices who administrated things. And over time, the shugo shifted into daimyo. And then that's where we have like the Sengoku Jidai and like Oda Nobunaga and all that stuff, which, creates this very, even throughout the Tokugawa shogunate, like I think there were the Han were, the domains of the aristocrats were incredibly decentralized. So like, this is how these sorts of systems develop. If you just kind of go with, I think comes is the singular and comites is the plural. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not, but don't trust me on that. I'm just, off the top of my head. But yeah, you're probably right. But when you understand how these systems developed and what they meant, you can look back at the medieval period and, these sorts of things like in medieval Europe were quite late in their development. And this idea, particularly held in feudalism, for example, of exchanging military service and loyalty, to the king for land, like that is not a particularly strong idea. And today, like, medievalists don't usually hold that. But if we can describe that sort of system, that sort of like feudal vassalage system, it really only emerges over the course of the 13th century, right? But so most of the medieval period does not function that way in Europe. Most of the medieval period functions with this appointment of offices. So I would encourage you, like when you're thinking about, like it'd be, like how can I make a fraught political landscape like the medieval period in Europe, like, early modern in India, South Asia, like early modern Japan. Like, how do I make that sort of landscape? Well, you have to actually like dig in and like look at these systems. Um, and that can be difficult, right? Because like a lot of those things don't have introductory checks for them. And some of that stuff is locked behind journals, and a single article can be quite expensive. But there's a decent amount of overview material that you can look at, right? Like there can be a book that is written by a scholar for a public audience, or as a bit of an overview text. And that single book can like cover a lot of stuff. But you'd also want to research like what would be a good thing to get, and you can reach out to people who have a background in that sort of thing, like myself. I mean, there are other people who have higher education, who are experts in certain things, who are sharing, like a collection of unmitigated pedantry by Brett Devereaux. I mean, I think he's like, writing specific stuff for world builders, and he provides citations and books and recommendations on things to pick up when thinking about um, ancient history and military history, which are great. You also have a variety. I know for archaeology, you've got a handful of YouTubers who dive into different archaeological ideas, who share that sort of stuff. So, that's the kind of thing that I would recommend, like really delving into to try to find stuff that could be good. Maybe at some point I'll create a list of recommended readings to like get people into certain cultures or time periods or topics. Because some topics are really difficult to get into, particularly stuff like logistics and infrastructural things, like understanding how pre-modern societies functioned is really difficult to capture without having like expert resources. So, coming up with those lists could be something that is good. So that's just like understanding things broadly, but then also with material culture, right? Good evening, Bib. You're just stuck on the time. Oh, think you're right about singular and plural. Okay, well, I accept your vote of confidence. Kate's quite good at keeping me honest. And part of having really good part of having good references is having good material references to inspire you for cultures, right? Because people can, especially for pre-modern cultures, the kind of objects that people engage with, the materials that they encounter in a day-to-day life that structure their lives, that give them identity and create community among people, because materials like shared culture includes the things around us, and by engaging with that sort of stuff you can develop sort of a better sense of who these people are, and also what they're spending their time doing. And that's sort of the segue into anthropium. So, and it's like museum anthropium. With anthropium, let me throw that up. Nope. Stop screen. Share screen. Anthropium. There we go. I don't know how to say it any other way. This. I have tried to pronounce it in a suitable way, and it just doesn't work. All right, so here we go. So how this game works is there are 10 objects that are going to be presented um, randomly, and I believe they're largely selected from the Met. Um, so, it's going to skew based on their collection. But what this does, especially for people who aren't familiar with sort of the body of artifacts that places like the Met would have, it can broaden the references that you have for making cultures, because cultures are not just, the economics and the political systems and, things like that. It is also the stuff. The things are very important for culture. So let's dive into it. And I'll explain how the game works. So this is the main page of the game. So you have the images from Met's open data of the artifact. Great. Oh, okay. Well, that's really helpful. You have the medium. So it's wood, ink, and reeds. You have a map. And this is where you are going to put your pin, your geo pin. You also have a timeline along the top. The timeline you select gives you 250 years. So you want to hit that artifact within like a 250-year period, and you want to get as close as you can to where this is from. It scores you out of 10,000 points for each artifact, 5,000 for time, and 5,000 for the distance you are from the region the artifact is from. And now these regions can be quite tricky. They're not necessarily consistent. They change based on time period. And sometimes, like, I don't know, like I'll put a pin for a South Asian artifact and I'll, put in, I guess, what is now India, and it'll say, no, it's Northwest India and Pakistan and Afghanistan. And it's like, okay, well, you also have 3 hints. You can hint to reveal a 1,000-year time span, or you can hint to get a region. Sometimes this is helpful. If you're looking at artifact and you can't decide whether it's from Mesoamerica or like Andean America, that can really help. But if you're trying to figure out whether something is from the Eastern or Western Mediterranean, it will not help. It will just say Mediterranean. So for me, it's really helpful for edge cases. And for some stuff, it can help me zoom in on the time, because some sculptural styles or some sculptural styles for these objects, if you do the location, it can kind of help you zone in on the time as well, if you know that. Okay, so let's get in here with this. I can make it big. Great. My first thought was that this was something for incense, but I believe it is something for writing. It is made of wood, and usually perishable materials like wood tend to be quite recent. So I would tend to put it, 16th to 19th century, but this looks kind of beat up. So I would think it's older, and older wooden objects tend to survive in more arid conditions. So this moves me towards like Iran or, Mesopotamia, Egypt. But this, there we go. That makes me think that it is Egyptian. So we are going to go Egypt. And now you have to decide with artifacts that are from ancient Egypt, quote unquote, whether it is like the pyramids of Giza or whether it's something more like Khufu. And I'm going to think it's something more like Khufu. And then you submit your guess. Hey, all right. Palette inscribed for Smedes, High Priest of Amun. So I was a little off with the time. I was quite close. So here we go. You can see the breakdown. It's inside the region. Thumbs up. I'm 80 years off, so it took off almost 400 points. So 9,600 out of 10,000. But, when we're thinking about writing kits, right? Like we think of quills and ink, and, like the pen sets and things. When you're writing with reeds, you need something to keep your writing reeds in. You need something to put your ink on. So this is, if you're developing cultures with writing, people spend a lot of time developing the orthographies, and they'll say, oh, it's written with a brush on papyrus, but it's like, what does the brush look like? What are the materials for the fibers of the brush? Where do they keep the brush? Where do they keep the ink? What do they work off? What palette do they use? Those sorts of questions can really start to dig into the more mundane, everyday parts of a culture that can make it feel more lived in. All right, so this is a Benin bronze, right? So some things that you can look for, that I look for in particular, is the hair. If an artifact has this kind of hair, then I associate it with sub-Saharan sub-Saharan Africa, particularly West Africa. It is made of bronze, of course, and Benin bronzes are made between 1500 and into the 19th century. Something to keep in mind when doing this is when European colonizers came into contact with these groups, because when they come into contact, they destabilize these regions. And then the artifacts, the objects, the materials from before colonization are what end up in the museums. So the scramble for Africa and those sorts of things happens in the late 18th, but primarily the 19th century. A lot of the actual colonization of sub-Saharan Africa happens quite late, and this is because Europeans lacked both the logistical capability to actually, conduct successful military campaigns into the interior of sub-Saharan Africa, and two, they were defeated just as much, if not more often, by local forces in combat. So, you have like Portuguese, for example, with arquebuses and, swords and pikes and things going against indigenous sub-Saharan African forces, with bows and dart throwers and their, shields and spears and quite menacing, sabers. And, the Portuguese, I would say, would lose slightly more often than they win. So, yes. So I'm going to land it. This one looks a little earlier. Let's do that. That one looks earlier, and this gets most of the period. If it's one of the later ones, then that kind of sucks. These come from around Edo, near Benin City, in particular. Boom. Yep. Yeah, so this is one of the later ones. But I got in there, so if you get it in, that's 10,000 points. And at the end, that'll give you a blue square, which is quite nice. Okay. All right, so what's this made out of? Wool. Okay, so wool is going to be something that's more recent. However, it is quite tattered. So I would say, I would push it back a little bit. Normally, if it's a wool artifact, I would do something in here, but I'm going to push it back a little bit. So, I don't know. What is this? This is the third one. If we look and we see what we have here, we have two figures on horseback, which is fine. What I think is interesting is the clothing. I don't know if they're wearing caps or not. That may just be a circlet. But they are wearing pants. They're wearing kind of close-fitted outfits. They have capes. That's kind of Persianate to me. Yeah, and I guess, Persian culture at that time would have been all in this area. I don't know specifically where this is from. I haven't seen this before, but let's go here just in case it's this area. That's a bit of the metagamey parts of it. Seems Chinese. No, 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 no. This is West Asian. I wouldn't say that's Chinese. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, it is West Asian. But it's earlier. Ah, okay. Yeah, Persian attire. They are wearing more Persian attire. Maybe I should have gone 10 to, yeah, that's okay. 11th to 13th century would have been better. All right, I was inside the region, but I was off by about 300 years, so that's 8,500 points. What do we got here? Yeah, the colors. See, the medieval Mediterranean world was very colorful. All right, so let's go to the next round here. Aha. Okay, I would say. So this isn't. I would say this is an early Christian artifact. So I would limit it around the Mediterranean. I don't know. I would say it looks more. Maybe more Western Mediterranean. Maybe I'll put it on Sardinia. Oop. Because it's like just the way that the regions work. So let's put it over there. It's rock crystal with a silver mount. So, I know that some similar things came from this region around this time, but let's put it in here, maybe? Yeah. Let's do that. Let's see what happens. Watch me get smoked. Oh! Okay. I'm happy I did not actually put it in Algeria. That would have been upset. Oh, that's great. Okay, 10,000 points. There we go. All right. So now we have this pottery. Let's see what it says. Lacquer cover. So this screams to me Japanese. I'm just gonna put it in Japan, and I'm gonna hit it to. No. There we go. Most of the Japanese artifacts that we think of as Japan kind of come from the early modern period. A lot of the stuff, like a lot of the cool swords and helmets and things like that you may be familiar with, are from the 17th century. Bullseye. A water pot. Yes, by Zen Pottery. Fun. Oh, Jake, I got a really clutch one earlier. Okay. Ooh. All right. Let's see this. All right. So this is going to be very recent, and it is going to be European. Let's see. It's wool and silk, of course. I mean, the construction is recent. It's made of wool, and it doesn't look awful. So it is going to be in the last couple hundred years. It could be anywhere within, kind of the borderlands between like Western and Central Europe. So let's just put it here. Because it could be English, could be German, could be French. Yeah. Ooh, okay, French. And right in the middle of that time period. How much is that? Oh, okay, so 250 points off. That's good. That's good. So this is another piece of Japanese pottery. 100%. No way that's not a piece of Japanese pottery. Maybe I'll put it over here in case it's from Korea. I have been betrayed by things being from Korea that I thought were from other places. Let's do that again. Yeah. So, again, if it's Japanese, then it's probably 17th century. A tea bowl. Well, I didn't know it was supposed to look like a clog, but all right. Great. So that on the top looks like a crocodile. What is this made out of? Copper. Okay. So that on the top looks like a crocodile, or an alligator. So it's either sub-Saharan African or it's from Meso or Andean America based on the collection. Because it's copper, I think it would either be Andean or Mesoamerican. I don't know kind of when it would be from. That would kind of depend on where it is. So I haven't used a hint yet. Let's use a hint because I think this would help. South America. Great. So let's go to South America. Sometimes it is like, oh, is it Ecuador or is it Peru? This could be, yeah. So let's put it near Lima, I suppose, or Cuzco, sure. So this part would have been encountered the Spaniards, and they would have shown up around this kind of period. So let's do there. Because I don't think they were doing it earlier. And it looks like a little hand pick with a cool little alligator on the handle. All right, so that is my guess. Should have put it near the original one. Hey, okay, so we got a bit of overlap. It was probably a little later, sure. Before 15th century. Great. But yeah, like kind of at the turn of the 16th century, 1500s to yeah, right in the 1500s, we would have ended the more, would have ended sort of the period where materials would have been collected. So are they going to give me the full points? No, because I'm 300 kilometers away. The distance really kills you for points, I find. All right, next round. Okay, so this is one of the ones that, on the face of it, Okay, so when I look at it originally, I thought it could have been Christian from, like the Eastern Roman Empire around, I don't know, 11th century. But now that I'm looking closer at it and ignoring this stuff and looking at the beads here, the bangles and things, the sword, I'm thinking it's probably from South Asia. And it's made of schist. Okay. And it looks... Does it look Buddhist or Hindu? I mean, I think it looks Hindu. I'll put it in the south. I remember there's some artifacts that are quite dark from South India, and that's from around this time period. That's what I've encountered before. So, yeah, that's just what I'm going to go with. Yes. Oh, 2nd century. Okay, cool. No, oh, okay. Well, I can read more about it at the end. This is my last one. This is my last one. Okay, so what do we got here? Come on. Okay, so this looks Tibetan. Or and you know, maybe 1500, 17. Let's do that. Yeah, but it looks Tibetan. I don't know. Let's put it here. So it's close to Bhutan. Maybe I'll put it over here so it's close to Nepal too. Let's do that. This is sort of meta-ish, but you know, like playing in the game, I guess. Okay. Oh, it was a bit later. All right. And it's specifically Nepal. Great. Yeah, so I got dinged a bit. Cool. Didn't do as well as I have been doing the past few days. What I get in the relief, really below average. Oh, my time was horrible. My distance was bad. Where's that relief from? Pakistan? Gandhara, I guess. Maya. The miraculous conception marks the Buddha Shakyamuni's final birth. Wow, okay, cool. This is something, from the Kushan period. I know who the Kushan are. That's quite neat. But anyway, over this, but over this, you can see a variety of different styles, even for the same materials. Like they'll show you pots from different parts of the world. They will show you different reliefs. They'll show you different columns and sculpture. And I mean, most people probably wouldn't have seen these kinds of things before. So by going through this process, and you know, you can do it. I don't know how long have I been doing it for? I don't know, a couple weeks. I haven't been doing it consistently. Over the past 5 days, I have. And I'll share it very quickly on the Discord where we're talking about it. But you can see things that you wouldn't have otherwise known about. You can become familiar with a variety of different artifacts, and this will broaden your collection of references that you have when you're making culture. So let's bring this back. So I hope everyone enjoyed Anthropology. I mean, you can also just look at the collection, the Met's collection. Like they have all of the majority of their stuff up on their website. You can also do it for other museums as well. Let's share. What are we sharing? Yeah, we're going back to Obsidian. Boom. Also, I like Obsidian because the logo looks like a lithic. Is Discord going to pop up? There we go. I thought it was likely that I was going to get just absolutely smashed today because it was the day that I was going to do it live. And it turned out two pieces of Japanese pottery, a Benin bronze, you know, I think, you know, a Tibetan artifact. Yeah, they had some stuff there that I was pretty sure about. What do we got, Jake? The meta for the Andes in general is a go-around trio, which is more of the central culture until the southern culture expanded militarily. Okay, that's fair. Gandhara and Buddhist items. Yeah, I didn't know that. So, and Buddhism is also like how old Buddhism is always really surprising to me. Like I know it like academically, but being able to actually see it on the timeline is quite profound. Still did better than me. Oh, well. Thank you, Jake. How well did you do? I'm sure you did quite well today. This seems like something you do well. Whoa, I did not do that much better than you. Come on. Jake with 89,000 points. But I mean, I think uh, being a, like, I don't know, cultural and historical geographer who studies the periods I study and, who has done all this world building stuff where I actually go out and search for all these things is, uh, gives a bit of a leg up. But just as a fun way to like see artifacts, I think it is quite fun, quite cool. That's something that really excited me about it. Um, yeah, so it also improves. Um, Also, I was in the midst of writing my final chapter for my dissertation. Over the last week, I was pulling, I don't know, 10 hours in the library writing, so I'm kind of fried. I know I can't write every day. I've been writing everyday space for the past, I don't know, 7 days, 8 days straight. And yeah, deteriorated. Um, You often find it hard to place the Buddhist items in South Asia if they aren't very obviously in one style or another. Yeah, I mean, I can kind of pick out some, like the Buddhist stuff I can pick out would be if it is more clearly from Japan. Uh, I mean, China maybe, but Tibet, like, because I'm familiar with Central Asia. So, like, if I see something that, is like, ah, yes, well, early modern Tibet is something I'm familiar with. So, if that is something there, then I can kind of pick it out. Just about roll my eyes after eating. Oh no. I had some very spicy Tibetan food actually, some tukpa recently. So I can definitely sympathize there. How are we working? We're going pretty good. Yeah. So having these sorts of references can help improve thinking through everyday life. Um and you know, Ask Historians on Reddit is a pretty good place to find sources because for all the answers, they have to provide sources. The folks on there are all, um, you know, really cool as well. There are, yeah, like finding YouTube channels of experts or people who engage with experts. There are a handful of people I know who share, like, who are science communicators around archaeology, who interview different experts who are like doing work and making publications. Like they'll read a publication, then interview the authors. One thing to note though is that because these fields are progressive and like things change over time, sometimes, you read something and then, in a year or a couple months even, something can be published that challenges it or overturns it or what have you. Um, but what I think is important is that you're actually engaging with what people are saying who are kind of on the up and up. And speaking more about anthropology stuff, like you have people like Flint Dibble, like Dr. Dibble has a YouTube channel and, he interviews all sorts of people on live. Oh, there's another anthropologist who specifically does stuff around world building. I think it's like Loridian something or other. Bibloridian is uh, clouding my. Maybe it's a Lorian. I think it's like anthropology in like 10 minutes or less is anthropology in 10 minutes or less. Michael Kilman. There we go. Loredan Labs is the name of his websites, but I will drop uh, Michael Kilman in there. And like, he interviews a variety of anthropologists he knows about different subjects. I think he had one about horses. Um, so he would also be someone to check out. He's also an author. I mean, he writes books. I haven't read any of his books, but I think he does have a world building book. I will grab that when I go for break in like 10 minutes. I'll grab that so I can show everybody. Kabuli Palau is a great success. Yes. I mean, I think making palau is certainly something that took me some time to get right. Though I do think just birinj, like in that style, in that kind of Persianate style, is uh is a difficult thing to master. Um, yeah. So the first thing is getting your references together. The second thing that I think would be, and of course, you're always going to be like going back to your references. You're going to be collecting more references. For example, something that I'm thinking about right now is like hats. I want the cultures to have like a different um, silhouette. So I'm thinking about different hats that they can have. So going out and I'm looking at the different styles of hats in places which I wouldn't normally think about. And so I've been thinking recently about like Indonesia and the Philippines, looking at different style of hats. And I know the rice hat is very popular, and I'm wary of like that simple like conical style. But there are some very cool ones that have like slightly different shapes to them. So that's something that I've been looking through. But after gathering references, what I like to do is kind of get the basics out of the way. And that would be stuff like, their their social organization, political organization. And by social organization, I'm meaning like kin groups and things like that. Thank you. And that includes whether they're matrilineal and patrilineal, all those kinds of things. Political organization, I'm going to be having a new version of the polity chart. I think where is my, how's this work? Great. World Building Festival. Polity chart? Yeah. I think I had a little chart here. It's not there. I have a new thing, a polity chart. I'm doing 3 instead of 5 for each side. I think that's a lot more manageable. But for the different parts of the polity charts, how concentrated or how diffuse is political power. There we go. How concentrated or diffuse is political power is the normative order. So the way things should be, like, the way things should be in society. Is that maintained through consensus or through coercion? Is society more decentralized? So are institutions and organizations autonomous from one another? Or is it more centralized? Like, do you have all of that, all of these different cultures, all of these different institutions and organizations within the same structure? So we have a lot more centralized societies today. When we're thinking another part, from geography, think about territorialization. How much do they care about, the exclusivity of this space that they are in, and not just between other polities, but also within the polity itself. And territorialization, like every polity is within a space, but it's usually, it goes from fuzzy boundaries and more, collective and common space that's kind of organized by the community. And then you can have very hard boundaries, borders, which are quite exclusive. And then within the polity, land is also exclusively owned, whether it is the state or another organization or individuals, right? Like, I don't think based on the variety of cultures and different systems, the public private property distinction isn't always very salient, right? If you're thinking about, like a medieval kingdom or whatever, right? Like a king owns land. The king is the government, but his land, a large amount of his land, is not public. In England, for example, a decent amount of it would be commons. But, being able to delineate between those sorts of differences. What economic system they use. How do they redistribute things? What is their subsistence? What's the primary way that people are surviving? So, it could be whether they're foragers, hunter-gatherers, the terms are somewhat interchangeable. Horticulturalists, agriculturalists, agropastoralists. Then we also have like industrial agriculture. I think people are kind of referring to contemporary society as like post-industrial sort of agricultural societies. And what differentiates sort of like a post-industrial agricultural society is that most people are not doing agriculture. Meanwhile, pre-modern agricultural societies, the majority of people are doing agriculture, right? Like that's the more like peasant society, which I think is a much more salient term to describe that sort of economic system than like feudalism. And then you also want to figure out how things are, distributed. Are they using a currency? Do they have a moneyed economy? Yeah, the Y was too early there. Do they have a moneyed economy? Are they redistributive? Do they have like central, using a term broadly, like banks where they store things for redistribution later? We can think about a palace economy, sure, but then we can also think of more household economies where, very large households can bring together all of their products and redistribute them amongst themselves. We also have more egalitarian forms of redistribution. You know, thinking about how um, thinking about the system that was used prior to the expansion of the Incan Empire, right? Like this idea of kind of taking taxing, either labor or produce, and then putting it into central stores for redistribution later was something that people were doing in their communities before the empire spread. So we can have an example there of an empire, a state-like or state polity appropriating these more communal practices for the purpose of perpetuating the state and sort of spreading that power. It's like, and redistributive economies as well can be like a palace economy. Like the Mycenaeans had a palace economy where they would be bringing in agricultural produce, textiles, and other things like that, organizing it through the palace and then redistributing it. You also have similar systems that are more temple economies that are functioning in West Asia, like Mesopotamia, for example, where the temple owns a lot of land that people are working on leasing, essentially, or they're renters or what have you. And they are giving produce to the temple, and then the temple is redistributing things. Vis-a-vis hats. Yeah, Haida hats. Haida hats are quite great. They're quite prominent here as symbols of indigenous folks and like decolonization in particular, because the Haida have increasing autonomy up on Haida Gwaii, which used to be what was that island called? Charlotte Island, Prince, something like that. I don't know. I forget now. Prince. Yeah, I'll have to look it up. Something I should know because I wrote about it for not the chapter I just finished, but the one before. But again, sometimes those things just go in, get on the page, and then evacuate your brain. Once you've sort of laid out the basics, and this is what I kind of did last time, right? Like, I mean, I did my references. I got all my references in advance. Queen Charlotte Islands, yes. I got all of the references in advance, and I was talking about, Neanderthals and Denisovans and like Paleolithic humans and how they went about doing things. And I was, referencing that as I was building the culture to provide a sense of grounding, right? Because if you have not built a culture like this before, you need something to kind of go off of. If you just rely on your assumptions about what a Paleolithic culture is like, and usually those assumptions come from media, which can, due to how genre conventions and meet the conventions of certain mediums work, they can really like cement antiquated like tropes that don't reflect the culture or what we know about Paleolithic peoples. I've seen a couple videos going around recently about what was it, like club marriages or something like that, which is pretty consistently depicted where, a quote unquote caveman will bonk a cave woman on the head, knock her unconscious, and then essentially kidnap her to be a wife. And like that is based in very colonial and racist ideas about what so-called quote unquote primitive people did. This is something that developed in the late modern period in a time of colonization, and Europeans were kind of projecting their bigoted ideas about non-white people onto past people. So that's why I went back to those references while I was building the social and political organization and, talking about the kind of economic systems that they'd have. The third thing that I do, and this tends to be the actual, like, a bulk of the work, quote unquote, of like world building, is going between between like tangible, I'll use the term tangible, and intangible culture. I use the term tangible and intangible culture. Some people use the term material and immaterial, but I am a materialist, so I don't think there's immaterial things. Hard materialism. So there are things that are tangible, things that we can touch. There is also intangible things, and those are the things that we cannot touch. So something tangible, for example, would be any of the artifacts, right? Like the pottery. The pottery is tangible. The practices of producing the pottery, the embodied knowledge that's kind of passed down, the way that the profession is done, those sorts of things are intangible. What is the sort of animating logics behind making the pottery? Those are sort of intangible. Oh, thank you, Jackie. Yes, proportions of figures can help. Details. Yeah. Art and art history at U of T. Probably be quite good at Anthropium then. The other one that I tend to play is Worldle. Um, I tend to be quite good at the actual like countries. I think yesterday the first country was the Gambia, and then it asked what was around it, which is Senegal. But then it asked like what's the capital of the Gambia, and like I don't know what the capital of the Gambia is. So that kind of shows the limits of your own knowledge there. Um, yeah. So So if we're thinking about things that can't be held, so these are like, people's ideas, their dispositions towards the world, um, like their practices and logics and these sorts of things. And when you are building a culture, you are oscillating between these three components when you're going back and forth. And that can lead us to this here, where, oh yeah, okay, good. So when I was designing the outfit here, can I zoom in? No? Okay. When I was designing the outfit, I was thinking through the materials, right? So this is more of a northern area in Zalea. I would imagine somewhere, in this kind of area in the north. And so, we want clothing that would be suitable for, climates that could be cooler. So that's why we have this pelt as a sort of mantle over the shoulder. I also wanted to incorporate the animals that we've been working with. I decided early on that I did want to focus very much on including a lot of animal materials. So, uh, we've got the ermine goulet griffins, so the Snowdents. Each Snowdent here has been stuffed and sewn up into these little warm, looking like, I don't know, raccoon tails or something like that. And those provide both maneuverability when folks are running around while also providing warmth. The different styles of the Goulet Griffins are also helpful. For different places, they can pick different species to use who have different patterns in their along their fur on their bodies. And for the pelt up here, incorporating the Trepon Vert Griffin into the design. Along the shirt here, so the shirt itself is kind of a pliable buckskin made from tanned hide using like brains to kind of emulsify it and treat it. And then on top of that, holding the skirt in place, like tied to the bottom of the skirt, we have a I don't know, like a vest, I suppose, woven from bark. And I actually wove some stuff from cedar a couple weeks ago, which kind of gave me the inspiration to do that. Hello, Cody, Caro, Zero. Um, I imagine this could be quite a fun poll on your YouTube homepage. But I think something that's more distinct that's been added in, because some of that stuff was in here. So we have some different ermine goulet griffin pelts in this design here. We've got the buckskin trousers and shirts there. But now we have this mask. And the mask is made to look like the face of the Courant griffin here. Let's see if I can. I think I have my iPad connected, so let's get that going. Let's pull that up instead. Bam. There we go. The perspective's a little off, but you know what? I think I did a decent job. So, this is a hat and a mask. The hat is important because it keeps the sun off of you. It also rains quite a lot in certain seasons on Zaalea. So I was able to incorporate the hat into there, but it's also a mask, and they can pull it down and wear this part here over their face. There's 2 lines in there as eye slits. And this is important because when they encounter dragons, the dragons spit their toxungens into the eyes of the, griffin on the mask. I'm sure this is going to be more stylized as time goes on. But yeah, I find that to be, I thought that would be really cool. And it was through actually Anthropium that I saw some masks being recommended from Papua and from Indonesia, no, from New Guinea, and then Indonesia as well, that, I kind of decided that that would be a really cool thing. And it also would work into the culture more broadly. You've been brainstorming ideas for procedural checks for your game. Oh, cool. So if you were looking for world building stuff for the adventure part of the game, then yeah, I'm sure that this would be helpful. And so thinking about the culture and working through how these people would interact with the landscape, and being able to bring in the biogeography and the speculative evolution elements that we have been working towards on the channel with Bib, bringing together as well as the dragons themselves, because the dragons are a pretty big part of the setting. And, they spit toxungens. They tend to aim for eyes and things like that. So, being able to incorporate that as well, because the people here will have had to develop different technologies to engage in a world in which there are big flying things that spit noxious substances at their faces. And then masks are a pretty prominent part of, cultures. Cross-culturally, a lot of different groups have very distinctive kinds of masks, and being able to incorporate that in the world building, because, again, not something that we see as much. So, from looking at references and, taking sort of a broad range of material culture into consideration, applying it into the world, helps it feel grounded and kind of responding to the physical environment and the biogeography that's there, can kind of like help build up the culture. And I think for hunters as well, especially this culture, which is in the process of domesticating the Courant griffins, which are playing more and more of an important role in their hunting practices and those kinds of things, forming this relationship with this animal. As hunters, hunter-gatherers, foragers who pay a lot of attention to to the world around them and to the rhythms of animals in their environment. I thought that was a cool way to kind of incorporate that into the actual character in the design. And then on top of that, we have the long lance, because how this group in particular tends to hunt is driving. I think I got that as well. Driving one of these griffins into a kill zone where they can then, not just one, usually driving multiple griffins into a kill zone where they can take them out. And I think they tend to have the longer lances. You can throw a longer lance, of course. Though, as they get closer to kind of that, I guess this culture is going to merge with Dovians who are coming from Alea. But as they get kind of closer to that merger, they're probably going to have both lances as well as, darts for throwing, like longer darts, obviously, like a throwing spear or something like that too. You're going to have a mix of hunting tools, but the idea of the lance and driving the animal in, and these people are more robust as well, so they're not as worried. They're a bit taller than the Dovians, who are kind of, again, the stand-in for humans. And it also reflects kind of what we see from Neanderthals, particularly in Europe, where they do tend to be corralling a herd of animals into a zone, a site where they can't escape, and then using and then just killing them there. So the lances seem to work really well for that, I feel. And what time is it here? Right now it's 11:17, so we can take some time to praise the sun. I am out of coffee, so I'm going to get more of that tasty coffee, and I'll be right back, and we will continue building out the ancient ancestral Zaaleans. So I will see you soon. All right, and I am back. I hope everyone took that 5 minutes uh, to venerate the great green dragon, whose body is the ground upon which we walk, and whose tail is the sun, which shines down upon us and brings us life. And where is, I think someone, yes, Oral Anomaly mentioned that the heat wave was crazy. And I think, yeah. And we had not just in Europe, there was also heat waves and thunderstorms and stuff like that out east in like Ontario and Quebec as well. I think with humidity, it was like 45 in a bunch of places. Um, yeah, in Europe, I think it's still continuing. So I hope everyone in Europe is staying cool. Cody. Oh, cool. A motivation score for your adventure game. The human concept of memory. Oh, that's cool. I think yeah, like there are a lot of I guess yeah, there are a lot of little adventure games. I don't know how big your game is. Well, I've seen little adventure games. I usually play single player games. I usually play like shorter ones that deal with concepts of loss or grief. Like, they're very like yeah philosophical kind of sort of ruminating on different parts of the human experience. So I think that's pretty cool. I don't know how you would enact that in programming. Not my thing. um and oh yeah, the coffee that I'm drinking, nice little coffee, is from Little Wolf, not a sponsor. But they do make good coffee, and the reason why I wanted to show it is because they got cute little wolves on the back. So, write what it says on the tin. It's a Little Wolf coffee, and they got little wolves on it. Oh, and just a reminder, if you haven't already, if you enjoy what you see, you can like and subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, you can hop over to Patreon and sign up. A couple weeks ago, we had the final sneak peek for the upcoming video, and big news on the video. I finished all the art. All the art is done. I just have some edits to make. But yeah, I will be writing the script for the Northern Lowland Rainforest video. I've already got half of it done. I think it's going to be about 6,000 words. And yeah, so I'm going to finish writing that, and then I will record it next week, and then work on it over next weekend. So yeah, should come out for the top tier patrons to check out when I have a calendar. Let me see. Got a new felt board as well that I need to start using. Yeah, like the 13th or 14th. So maybe I'll release it on the 17th or the 24th. Yeah, very excited about that. Because this one's been a long time coming, but between the dissertation chapter and the conference and, having to travel and other stuff, it's just been a bit of a whirlwind to get it done. And after that, we're going to do the flora episode. I'm very excited for the flora episode. There's some cool flora stuff coming. Yale came to mind the other day. I was wondering about the plural. I think it's Yale. Let's check this for a sec. Oh, it closed for some reason. I was probably stepping away. Yes, Yale. So yeah, the plural would be Yale's ES. That's what I've been doing. And here, getting back on topic, well, not that it is on topic, but returning to the question kind of from before, we have Michael Kilman and Kyra Wellstrom. I believe Kyra is more of a bioarchaeologist. Let me check. I haven't read this in a while. I don't know if it says in here. Anyway, so here is Building Better Worlds by Michael Kilman and Kyra Wellstrom. Both of them are anthropologists. Um, and this is an introduction to anthropology for uh, designers, fiction writers, and filmmakers. What I really like about this is that it is like a very good introduction, and it's quite chunky. It comes in, it has references in it as well, but with the references comes in at 400 pages. It's written for, like, I think an audience that's world building. And does it have a table of contents? Yes, it does. It talks about how thinking like an anthropologist can help build better worlds, talks about understanding culture, um, talking about ancestors and human evolution. So we do have like bioanthropology in there and the archaeology aspect. They go through language as well as a variety of different social aspects for organization. They talk about the distinction of gender and sex. They talk about the importance of disease. This is something that is so often glossed over. And don't worry, in Dove, there are going to be some pretty devastating plagues and things. They talk about political systems. They talk about violence and war. Also, they look a little bit at science and magic. I think and they talk about monsters in their final chapter. So there's a huge range of stuff that's discussed here. And if you don't have a background in like anthropology, sociology, or like human geography, I definitely recommend looking at this. You know, if you haven't engaged in those kinds of social sciences before, or you know, if you're and yeah, and that applies to anybody. You know, if you're younger and you're not, you know, in your early 20s, like undergrad age, I think this would be a good introduction to a lot of those topics. If you're in that kind of undergrad or what have you, but if you're older and you just want to engage with those sorts of things and have two anthropologists kind of like walk through that kind of stuff, I think this is a good book for it. If you are already familiar with anthropology or cultural geography or something like that, I think it can be. Well, I enjoyed sort of my personal dialogue I was having in the pages, like my notes with the authors. That's something that I liked. There were some references that they gave and some of their perspectives on different aspects that I thought was constructive. But you're going to get different things out of it based on, you know, who you are and what you're up to. And yes, Michael Kilman has a YouTube channel where, you know, he does world building stuff and talks to different anthropologists and things. All right, let's... I don't need the iPad anymore. Let's turn that off and switch back to the Obsidian. Oop. I don't know if y'all can hear me buttling around, but a little example where the value you have as a child can associate, propagate like child, offspring, bear, cub. Oh, so if you see a bear and it's a cub, the value you feel for your child factors. And assume the bear feels at least the motivation. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so the ways that we make different associations can link together those ideas. I do like that. And also, this is when I think about conlanging, like constructing languages for the world building projects I do as well. You know, thinking about ways that words change over time through analogy and through association. And it would be interesting that, you have the word for a a human child, and then that could generalize to offspring, and then people could be using it to refer specifically to the offspring of animals and create a new word for human children, in this case Devian children, and then that word for animal young could then narrow in to refer specifically to cubs. That's cool. Yes. But those kinds of associations, I think, are really neat to explore, and they're also quite cultural. So now we are back. I haven't written anything about the masks, I believe, in here. I just kind of did it. So we have our masks. The masks are going to be made out of wood largely. They're going to be painted. They can be painted with the materials that are available. So, like ochre and black is from like coals or ashes, right? Charcoal. Yellow can come from certain plant pigments. The orange on here could actually be scales from the animals. But we do have ochre for orange. Darker colors are easier. And they have that kind of like pale color, which could just be, the color of bark or something like that. So that's easy to kind of get across. These masks are going to be the faces of griffins. And then the mouth is open, where the eyes are, where the eye slits. Yeah, the eye slits are going to be in the open mouth. Or alternatively, the eye slits can be lower down on the griffin, like they could be under the mouth if the beak is closed. I just like the idea of having like that open beak as a place to like put on the head as a hat or to put over the face as the mask itself. It'd still have to have that bump. That's the thing. So I think it just works better with the open beak. Or the beak could be closed on top and then have the eyes in the middle. Yeah, we'll see. The earlier ones are going to be more quote unquote like lifelike. And then later ones are more stylized and abstract. And then, so this is the sort of like tangible stuff that we're talking about, but then we're going to talk more, and then of course the reason why they do it too. Connections of space in the same way. It actually kind of works for a form of pathfinding. Oh, that's really neat. I'm not sure how again, I don't know how one would do that in computer programming, but that's quite cool. Like, all right, so we got the Dragon Talks Dungeons. Now we are going to connect it to the intangible stuff. So the different masks or the different styles of the masks that they make, because I do have this one that's very rectangular, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? So the So the different styles of these masks, these griffin masks, we're going to refer to them as griffin masks, are regional. Um, so, and the polities are also regional, and they are based around these matrilineal clans. So neighboring, so polities. So the matrilineal clans and the polities. So the matrilineal polities, which compose, no, the matrilineal clans, which compose the polities. If you remember from last time, um, the polity, the regional political organization, which coordinates alliances and mutual aid and uh, these kinds of things, are substantiated by clan membership, and the clan membership is passed down through women. So a women's children will belong to the same clan, and it is through men and women partnering, and of course women move into a territory. The territory is substantiated through passing down. Um, I think it's substantiated through the continuity of male descent I have there. So father and son inhabiting the same landscape, the local groups, living in the same place and having connection to the land over time. But it is the matrilineal clans who are going to kind of be passing down these styles, which means men and women in the clans are going to be making them based on their clan membership. Um, yeah. Uh, and so we can have differences in shape as well as the griffins. And I do have here like a very standard courant griffin. But through domestication, the courant becomes Zaalean. And the different Zaalean griffins are, I guess, regionally, the Zaalean griffins would have different looks to them. Like we have this orangey spotty one, but they would be lighter and darker. I do like spots being the main thing, but some can be more mottled than others. Like, have larger spots, maybe spots on top of spots, which will make them look distinct from kind of dogs, which is kind of what I'm thinking about. But I do like the idea of the faces being lighter, and they have socks on their tail and on their feet as well. So these faces being a lighter color. I suppose if you could have ones that are very light all over, but I don't think you'd have ones that are like all dark. Though you may have them with like very dark spots. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. So different regions are going to have different variations in the domesticates. So they're not breeding, like they are controlling um, their populations. That's what the domestication kind of is, where the domesticator controls the population of the domesticate. But they're not like creating specific breeds to do things. There's just going to be different flavors, and that will probably be territorial. That'll be based on territory. So those will be maybe a bit more stable in a way. Well, no, maybe not. But they're going to be based more on the territory and the polity, sure. They can also choose griffins that they hunt, that they have close associations with. So they can choose bear griffins that they hunt. I think one of what was it, the Gardon? I think it was called the Gardon. The one with the big tusks and the Thagomizer on the back. That would be a pretty good one to have. Yeah, and then also the rampant griffins. Or the sanguine griffins, the knife-faced baboon crocodiles. Yeah, I think those would kind of be the ones that they would prioritize. And so you would be able to tell to some degree membership in territorial or clan groups based on the shape or depiction or and then we could also tie this to adulthood as well. This is something specifically associated with adults because they're the ones who are going to be traveling away from the camps. And what we talked about before is that these camps have tarps, right? So, and these tarps can also have patterns and things on them, right? Because they're just to hide the AAZ people below them. It doesn't need what you're doing, like because they're large dragons flying overhead. It doesn't need to like camouflage, like look like trees or something. I mean, that can be an idea originally. Like the patterns can be varieties of green, maybe. Though I want to see what kind of colors that they can get their hands on. Probably yellows, perhaps. I mean, yeah, again, orange, black, red, yellow. Certain colors are going to be easier to come brown are going to be easier to come across than green. But these large tarps hoisted over a camp are going to be, they can have patterns and other things on them. They can act as a bit of like dazzle camouflage. I don't know how to spell camouflage, do I? I do. Excellent. No, I do not. Ah, the U comes over there. Great. Don't know how to spell segmented, apparently. No, I know how to spell potagium. This computer doesn't know how to spell potagium. Oh, I like that. Yeah, through encountering the Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's quite cool. And I think, yeah, having encounters with, different, um, I guess what the pathways and whatnot of different people, um, or different streams of consciousness or what have you, and the ways that those pathways connect when you encounter someone else's pathways, that could definitely prompt questions because we often assume that everyone means the same thing that we mean, or they make the same associations we make when they say something, or when we say something, we assume that they have the same frame of reference. But trying to transfer over the broader associations and all of the ambiguities that come with would definitely be cool. Yeah. Yeah, no, that is quite cool. And that does sort of broaden the ambiguity and also, I guess, like create kind of compassion. Large tarps, yes. And so the top of the tarp, so for a dragon looking down, the top of the tarp can have different like stylizations, and if it's based off of the ground or trees or shrubs and stones and stuff, then they can have sort of abstract um, stylizations of the landscape. But when they look up at the tarp, I imagine they're either, if it's very thin, which could be ideal, because then some amount of light would pass through. Uh, yeah, if it's a thin leather tarp that's treated, like, you know, then they would see it above. Um, but then if there's heavier tarps for the winter, then they could have patterns on the inside, on the top, and the sides. And these could be like, these could be special. Like these are special story tarps. They could have different traditions on the tops and the sides, telling stories about significant things that have happened. So this again is interacting with that intangible culture. And this could also eventually be a source of writing, right? Not that the pictures on the insides of these tarps or these pop-up tents sort of things. Yeah, now I could have done with the iPad. Um, are writing, but it's kind of like a proto writing where certain images or symbols in proximity prompt memory. So it's more of a mnemonic device. So by looking at these, you remember stories, and then you share those stories by pointing and working your way through sections of the tarp, and then that imparts that cultural knowledge um, to other people, and then they grow up and they do the same thing. Yes. Oh man, that mnemonic was a word I thought I was going to mess up. Help band members. Member and remember. Hmm. I suppose this could also work depending on the season, right? Because some of them who live in the north, you know, they would have a cooler winter, but they would also be quite dry in some areas. In other places, though, the wet season would where you'd want to have these tarps, right? So, because yeah, and in here and in this area, there's the monsoon in the summer, but then there's also the winter up here where it's colder. Um, and then you'd have, yeah, so in the monsoony areas, you'd probably want to have uh, different tarps. So there may be different tarps based on season, but they'd be things that you'd be able to roll up and bring with you, either with a travois or in your backpack. You know, everyone has a pack that they roll things up. So they could roll parts of the tarp could be rolled up. Uh, and you put your stuff inside. And then when you get to the next site, you unroll it, take your stuff out, and then attach them together. There we go. Or they can just go on a travois or something. A curiosity mechanism. Well, I mean, if the unknown things, yeah, curiosity mechanism. I suppose if the unknown tokens prompt going down different pathways and associations, that could work. Uh, yeah, I don't know if I'm parsing it, but that's what kind of prompted for me. Travois to move tarps. And a travois is like you have like two sticks and you can cross them over. You can pull it and you can put things where the sticks intersect. And this is something that groups that didn't use wheels used to move things across. And what's useful about those is that they can go across relatively uneven ground quite easily. Indigenous peoples in the prairies use them quite frequently. Let me see if I can bring one up. Let's. Oh yeah, you can't see it. Okay. But what's fun is that they put them on dogs. So, let me see if I can find one that dog is pulling. Oh, here we go. That's a good one. Or I can just copy the image and I'll just drop it in the thing here. There we go. There, see? So you got the little dog, and he's got a collar, like a proper, like a collar here, um, like same collar that like ox would have or something like that, like an oxen, an ox, yes, like oxen would have, and ox. And then you have the two poles coming out. Sometimes they intersect. These ones are going side by side, but you can see there's a platform that you can put things on or tie things to. And then the doggies can pull them. And I think that would be a great thing for the courant or the Sergeant griffins to do. Let's do that. There we go. Great. I'm still getting used to this. The dog's gonna sort of yoke. Yeah, yeah. Which is cute, right? It's like no snow sled dogs, I think. Ancient and tarps, maybe think about Hmong groups can be distinguished by their dress. Oh, yes. The flowery Hmong Gamu. Or is it Gamu? Oh, very pretty. All right, y'all can't see it, so I'm just gonna continue with my current train of thought. And for indigenous peoples of the plains, the introduction of horses, which happened earlier, than is normally. I mean, normally they, no, in the past, historians usually pegged the horses to horses entering indigenous cultures of the plains to the Pueblo revolt. However, we have archaeological evidence and we've always had oral evidence. And of course, indigenous peoples have told us that they had horses for longer. And we do see horses before the Pueblo revolt. They were moving up. And what's really interesting is that indigenous peoples were moving the horses north and they were moving them through their own networks and learning their own forms of horsemanship, of equestrianism, and then they were transferring that, which is quite cool. Something else that was, quote unquote, confusing to archaeologists and historians was that the ways that local indigenous peoples kind of organized their horses was different. They didn't really keep them stabled, like penned up. Sometimes they would just have their domesticated horses hanging out nearby, just kind of roaming around. And when they wanted them, they would just, wrestle them up, or just, call them over and whatnot. So sometimes the ways that different cultures interact with their domesticated animals can be quite different than other cultures and what we would expect. Yeah, we talked about containers, and these containers can also be transported. So earlier AAZ cultures they would use I guess Devian travois. So like they themselves would be pulling travois, and then after the domestication of the Sergeant griffin, and that would occur, I don't know, 40,000 years. I don't know, probably around like 30,000 years. Is kind of when, yeah, let's say 35,000 years. I don't know how far. I mean, the oldest dog we have is like the remains, actual remains, are what, like 18, 18, 15, 18? I think it's 18. Oh yeah, yeah, 15, 16,000 years ago is probably. Oh no, 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 no. Yeah, 18,000 years ago. Great. Um. Uh. Yeah, we can just say more than 18,000 years ago. But I do want them to be doing it before the Davians show up. So I don't know. Let's say 30,000 years. I'll have to double check when the group, the Davians that show up that are the wingless, when, or that help compose the wingless when they arrive. But incorporating the Shijong Griffins allows them to move more stuff, right? There are more members of the band, essentially. There's more. I mean, pets are people. Uh, and the Sejong Griffins are smaller and they need less food. So, if you have a group of a dozen people and you have, I don't know, dozen Sejong Griffins with you, then you can move more stuff than you could have otherwise moved. And what do we got here? This is articles. Every member is participating in the foodways. We got the material. Oh yeah, and then seasonally as they move through. The dog, like the griffins, the Sejong griffins, they're not dogs. Um, yeah, so groups that overlap have essentially mating Sejong griffins. So, if you have two griffins, uh, then, and you're in the same territory or you're in the same polity or neighboring polities, you're going to encounter people throughout the year. Um, and the people who you encounter, those are going to be the ones who your animals are, the animals are going to be mating. So, that's how we can sort of regionalize these different looks of Sejong Griffin. And we've also already established that they tend to be more, not isolated, but like they tend to be insular. That's not right. I'm getting closer. There we go. So yeah, so they're going to have the regional looks. However, I imagine while groups wouldn't there would be interactions with neighboring groups that don't practice the same subsistence style or strategies. But these are going to be like explicit trade relations. Right. And these trading relations are not based on um relatedness like alliances and these sorts of things. So there are ways that so if you imagine a group that is more coastal, they're primarily engaged in, like mariculture. Um, and, maybe they're going after the, what was it? Cendrille or Sable? Sable or Cendrille? Cendrille. I have to double check how griffins. So like the sea griffins. So maybe they're hunting sea griffins. Maybe they're, there's other stuff that they're gathering. There's going to be cute sea plants that they can eat. And there's going to be a variety of invertebrates, both those that swim and hard-shelled ones that they're going to be gathering and stuff like that. So yeah, those people are going to primarily eat that. I mean, other times of the year they may be hunting small game and gathering other things near the coast. They could be getting some quite cool stuff like shells and things like that they'd want to the people who are in the interior who are engaged in like megafaunal hunting, like these folks, and they could have things they want to trade. Like they have these large pelts from the Ver Griffins. They probably have all sorts of colorful ossiscoots and sort of things like that. Maybe the scoots could be, maybe if the green scoots are kind of ground up, uh, they can be mixed with a medium that can allow them to be painted. That's something for me to investigate. Where was I writing about that? And if that's the case, that would be really cool because we have all of these griffins with scoots, Asa scoots that are all the different colors of the rainbow. So they could get all sorts of different colors by using um, the pigments in these structures. And I'm going to say they're pigments. Not, they're not going to be like the scoots themselves aren't going to have like structures in them that change the color. I mean, we do have some griffins who have like iridescent fur and stuff like that. But that would be the structure of the hairs, the fibers. Oh, I mean, if you feel you're terrible at will building, then I think it's. I mean, it's an art. I mean, it's a practice. Well, through doing it, you'd get better at it. You can make a world build itself. Hey, that could be interesting. I don't know if it's insane. I mean, I think certain parts of the world would probably um, would probably need some input, but by creating interesting associations between different nodes, you can probably produce uh, some I want to say some quite novel intangible cultures and things like that. Depends on what your goal is. I mean, the game sounds fun. Yeah, maybe because people grind up. If we yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what um the physical chemistry of this idea is, but I will have to double check. But I think that is promising. Oh, but shells. I mean, people grind up shells for pigment and stuff like that too. So that maybe it's closer to that. And I was typing something else about membership based on the shape of griffin, master gifted, going away from camp. So then we can have rituals associated with adulthood and youth. Okay, so here we go. Youth are associated with the camp. So youth are associated with the camp, and adults are associated with the not the camp, like the settlement. I don't know. We'll just say camp. So this is the domestic. I mean, the idea of the domestic here is quite silly. The camp under cover of the tarp. And adults are associated with the open sky. Aha! Here we go. And so we have all the open sky, we have dragons and things. So maybe we can have a form of worship or veneration. No, we'll say worship or prayer. Here we go. Where before people leave, they can petition dragons. They can petition various spirits. How about unseen members of the community? Let's do that. Ancestor spirits. There's probably a dragon spirit, dragon spirits. Entities. Unseen dragon. Yeah, different entities. And I guess they could petition the dragons for essentially leaving them alone, right? And they could offer, exchanges, right? So, and this is where kind of like orthopraxy starts to come in, right? Practicing religion right is very important. It's not necessarily what you believe per se. Um, you know, so they could be telling the dragon, what's a good word? If Jake's still here, what is it, like a mediator? like one of the dragons could essentially be like a diplomat for the people. I'm thinking, okay, so Jake, I'm kind of thinking of like a reverse shamanism, maybe, where the people don't have a shaman, but they treat certain entities as diplomats or mediators for other groups, if that makes sense. That if the dragons leave them alone, then the people will leave them food. Pretty okay at the moment writing. Yeah, yeah. I mean, physicality is great too because you can tell a lot about a person from their physicality, like what they're wearing and you know how they look. That can tell you a lot about how they fit into a society. Um, you know, Historically, if someone was tanned, they were probably spending a lot of time outside. Who spent a lot of time outside? Peasants. Uh, though today, there's been the move for people to kind of take on that, glow, that quote unquote healthy glow, because, being able to spend a lot of time outside and tan is now associated with leisure, right? Mediator works. Makes me think of the Ainu, where certain animals are recognized as earthly manifestations of divine forms, more or less the same animal. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. I don't think they're going to these people are not going to be capturing green dragons or anything. That would be a problem. Um, but, recognizing a sort of divine entity as the mediator, perhaps they do locate that entity in an earthly manifestation. But this is happening at their tarp, right? So their tarp is not near one of these green dragons or anything like that. I do have cannibal metaphysics over there, so don't make me wave my cannibal metaphysics around. Telling the dragon mediator, Oh, oh, Jake. Okay, here we go. There can be a special mask. That one member, that a member, oh no, or some members of the community wear. There can be special masks that some members of the community wear. Usually, uh, who's going to be staying back at the camp? Um, I mean, pregnant or breastfeeding women, I guess. Women who are like too pregnant to like go hunting. Like you don't. That would be silly. Um, Probably, you know, their partners. Um, People who are too elderly to participate. People with disabilities. Yes, yes. So yeah, so I imagine that the bands are, you know, at least a dozen adults. So or maybe yeah. So you would have like at least half a dozen people who are actually going on the hunts, and then there's an assortment of other adults who are doing other things. Their partners who stay to help. Uh, and one of the reasons why here I have their partners staying is that there are many hunter-gatherer cultures who place taboos on men whose wives are pregnant or just gave birth or menstruating. So those men stay in the camp and they help essentially. So we haven't decided on the exact contours of why that is, but I think that that could be useful. So pregnant nursing women, and their partners, elders who are too old, people with disabilities. Oh, hi, Oral Anomaly. We were talking about the heat waves and yeah, how it has been bad in Europe, but also we had a heat wave in Eastern Canada, the Middle East of Canada, from my perspective. The Middle East being Ontario and Quebec. I guess the Near East would be the Prairie Provinces, and the Far East is the Maritimes. Actual motion. You have an example character jumping into muddy puddles that leads to description. Oh yeah, I think that's very good. That kind of dynamic writing to move attention through a scene is can create a really nice flow. I think I really enjoy that in people's writings. There are kumai. Yeah. Bear kumai is the most status. So I'm thinking that there are going to be special masks that stay in the tarp, and members of the community who stay have a special role where they put on the special masks and they are sort of embodying the mediators from the various non AAZ, okay, we'll say just not human, non Dovian. Let's do Dovian. Non Dovian communities. There we go. There we go. Okay, so yeah, so we're gonna have like a predatory dragon. So we have predatory dragon masks, like green, primarily green and black dragons. I'm thinking because those are the ones who'd be the ones you'd want to worry about. Those are the ones that are like hunting people occasionally. Yeah, this is where the rampant griffin. Again, rampant and sanguine griffins, because the sanguine griffins are going to be the ones that mess you up. Yeah. I think it was 45 with the humidity in Toronto. That's just brutal. So yeah, maybe the masks, these griffin masks that people wear out are not these ones, because those are down here. They also have Ver Griffin masks. And here they petition those griffins essentially in an exchange, right? Like, or maybe they're like, maybe it's a treaty that they're making with them. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, I know it's 12:30, but we're in the intangible bit now. See, because we have tangible culture, we have the tarp. We've created this idea of a safe, literally a safe space within the tarp. This is the realm within the tarp is the realm of the Dovians, the animals, the people who go in and out of this space are the Zaaleans, the domesticated griffins, and then people. So there's this close relationship there. That's why the masks they wear are the Zaalean griffin masks, because in a way they have sort of associated themselves with these griffins. Um, uh, but the other masks, these predatory dragon masks, the rampant and sanguine griffin masks, their griffin masks, these masks are used in a ritual, like ceremonial way, before going on hunts or before leaving the tarp for like big things. Like you have to go out and like, I don't know, get some fuel or something. I don't think they really care all that much about it. But if they're going hunting or foraging, maybe, this is sort of the ritual that you do. It's maybe a daily thing that has to be done. Yeah, so petition the dragons not to eat you. And in exchange, leave meat for a successful hunt. Same thing. Yeah, same thing there. And then there's Bear Griffin masks. They petitioned these griffins in like a treaty, right? Asking these griffins for, I guess, one of them to like for sacrifice, And in exchange, they practice a very specific kind of hunt. And this could include certain like seasonal taboos, like certain animals, certain bear griffins. So like they won't hunt like during mating seasons and things. Like they What do you think about the symbolism of the predators inside the domestic space we associate with some sort of outside space? Okay, let's think about these tarps a little more. All right, so the tarps are going to be held up by wooden poles. If I can spell wood with the proper number of O's and double D's, which are obviously going to be carved. And these can also be the travois poles as well. Because how are you going to move them otherwise, right? Wadden. Yes. Yes. Master stored on the edge of the camp. Yeah. Here we go. We're getting there. There can be outer poles around the edge of the canopy. We can call this a canopy. And inner poles So there is an outside space, an inner space, no, and then a space within the inner poles, and a space between. Right? So there's going to be a circle. There's the inner poles that are holding it up. Then there's going to be, and there's probably a central pole that can kind of lift it. If they have a fire, then the smoke from the fire can go out this where the central pole holds up the top. Outer poles, as you can be, inner poles at the inner pole and inner poles. Or do I want it to be flatter? No, they need smoke to escape. They do need smoke to escape, or else they'll go blind, have lung problems. So there's an outside space and a space within the inner poles and a space between the outer and inner poles. The ritual is done in the space between the outer and inner poles. Yes, I have made a liminal space. Ugh. Hello, Hashikari. Hashikari? Excellent. Yes, we made ourselves a liminal space to have this ritual. And the masks can be kept then on the poles in that liminal space. Excellent, 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 excellent. And then, I mean, the heavier ones, and they're probably going to be between these spaces, depending on the time of year and depending on the culture. They could also hang panels down. I mean, in the summer, you'd probably want air circulation to be moving through, so maybe they don't have as many panels. But in the winter, you would want heavier covering. So the panels on the side would be... I got it right the first time. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so Roxashikari. Roxas. Yeah, okay, Roxas. All right. Whenever I see an X, I just go, so that's my IPA bias there. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, welcome. Pitfire is based on their use in Jamaica by Maroons because their shared pressure of not wanting their gatherings to be noticed by colonial enforcers. Yeah. Based on the smoke. That was the link in my head. Yeah, yeah, based on smoke. Must see it stem from weird. I think supernatural concepts is pretty good. All right. Roxas. On such idea, if someone had the ability to draw chalk outlines in the exact location and configuration of someone's body when they died, even if the body was moved after never found. Ooh. Yeah, I love I love supernatural stuff like that. Yeah, I think like, supernatural stuff, going back to talking about references, I think, supernatural stuff is very cool. But then there's also like, I think pseudoscience and pseudo-historical ideas, superstitious ideas are all very useful, though I wouldn't use them, I wouldn't confuse some of those things with, you know, specifically like the pseudo history and pseudoscience stuff with, actual expert things. Because there's more and more, pseudo archaeology stuff and pseudoscience stuff floating around. I'm not saying the chalk thing is. Clearly that's, a supernatural thing. I just thought I would link it together. And all right, so I need to finish this. Where's that idea? I need to finish this idea before I call it. There we go. Okay, that looked like it jumped for a sec. Okay. Special masks kept on poles, embodying the meteors from various non-Deviant animal communities. Oops. Okay. So when foraging parties leave the when foraging parties are planning, leave the surrounds of a camp, then they need to undergo this ceremony where they ritually pass from the safety of their canopy tarp under the open sky. Where and this is where the people leaving don their own. That's not, is that how you do dawn? Look up dawn. Thank you. Is that going to pop up? Oh, the dawn thing doesn't pop up. Put on an article of clothing. It is. It is DON. It felt wrong, but it also felt right. So, whether people don their own Zaalean griffin masks and transition with their from Deviant people to, I guess, Deviant griffin people. Yeah, because wearing these masks, these guys are special critters because they exist in both realms. The domestic Zaalean orange griffins, who are descended from a group of Courant griffins, and this mask allows Devians as people to kind of cross that border as well. CIA did research. Yes, there is a book that was written about that called The Men Who Stare at Goats. I think there was a movie. There's a movie made about it as well, which is amusing. And it does capture some of the stuff they did. You know, they thought it's like, oh, what was it? In the book, I remember distinctly the author is like talking to someone who was in this program, and he was thinking, like, he's like, oh, if you think really hard about the space between the atoms in a wall and then you run at the wall, you can go through it. And then he just, you know, bounces it off the wall. Um, yes. Oh yeah. I mean, I mean, I think, you know, based on all of the stuff they did, they'd probably come up with something. I think that that sort of stuff would be cool for like an alternate history where you're like, well, what if you had a Cold War where psychic powers were like obvious and true? I think that would be like a cool place to kind of build from it. And it reminds me, speaking of anime, it kind of reminds me of like Darker Than Black, which is a really cool anime, which I recommend checking out. Because it's also like a neo noir spy thriller with supernatural powers. But yeah, here we go. And then when they come back, they kind of go through the opposite of this process. So you can make very specific petitions to divine entities. So, you know, you can say, like, please protect me while I am hunting. And if I succeed at hunting, I will leave you the heart of whatever I hunt. But there, see, there's the if, like, protect me as a blanket thing, just protect me. And then if I succeed, please, I will give you, you know, I will leave the heart and you can have that. Um, you know, so there may be certain cuts which are like, you're very specific. And this is also a thing too, right? Because after they hunt something, like they are going to be defending it um, from opportunistic creatures that come by. And they're going to take what they want and what they need. Uh, and then they're going to leave, and then, you know, you'd probably see, you know, other griffins or dragons or what have you come and like eat the food, so they can actually, like, you know, logically they can actually see the effect if they have a successful hunt. um but I mean, if a dragon does attack them when they're out, then, you know, they would come up with a reason as to why it happened, right? Like, you know, maybe there's a taboo that was broken, maybe we didn't, I don't know, respect the dragons in a proper way. You know, maybe the ritual wasn't done properly when we left. You know, maybe somebody did something they weren't supposed to, right? They can come up with reasons. But yeah, then they need to apologize, and then the community needs to make it right. Because it is a communal thing. Oh, if I do this, does it make two? Oh, cool. That's neat. Oh, it makes two brackets. That's very convenient. Does it do it for this too? No, it does not. All right. Yeah, and then they come back, they confirm, they essentially close their endeavor from the outside. They come back, and they can share, you know, the meat and other things that they've gone and gathered throughout the day. Um, And this also links back to, if we go back up here, to the egalitarian nature of the subsistence, right? Everybody is participating in this ritual. Um, so this just sort of emphasizes the egalitarian nature of their group, where economically they are structured around. Oh, can't spell subsistence to save my life. So economically they are structured around everybody in the group participating in all aspects of their industry, right? Like, everybody's making lithics, everybody's making these tarps, everybody's moving things. You know, people remember the stories, people participate um, in the ritual. When they're hunting, just every able-bodied adult who's able to participate in hunting is going to be doing it. Yeah. So this just kind of like the ritual aspect too, like the way this community is produced as a band is through this ritual process. It's emphasizing that, they are also an island. It's kind of emphasizing that idea that this is a more insular culture. They wouldn't imagine themselves as occupying a territory necessarily, right? Like they wouldn't say, oh, like, yeah, we have borders. It's like, no, no, no. Like we live within this broad area that we frequent, but our spatiality, like where their space is inside their, I'd say the square probably, or a circle, what have you, but inside that tarped area, they're within their canopy, is where they are safe. So yeah, maybe over the week I will make some art of one of these canopies. Yeah, maybe that'll be the art for next time, because I do have some more free time this week. This week I'm going to be largely working on getting this video done. I need it out of the way so I can get all this stuff done for the World Building Festival. Yeah, reminder, World Building Festival is going to be the long weekend. Well, for me, it's a long weekend. Long weekend in September, right before courses start. So I get to do that, and then I get to go headfirst into teaching. That's the first weekend in September. So I think it's the 4th, 5th, and 6th. I think I'll be doing. Mal and I are closing it out. Jake, Miles, and I are going to be doing the talking about the process of doing the climate mapping for the Boobaverse. And I think that's going to be about an hour long, and we're going to start doing that kind of manual climate map on the 19th. So look forward to that. We're doing one more round of Paleolithic culture building next week, on the 12th. Yeah. Also going to be presenting the polity chart, and I'm going to have Nikolai from World Building Pasta on with me to do that. And then Bibra and I are going to have 2 sessions and to talk about agriculture. And we're going to be developing, I believe, some plants and animal agriculture for Tira 292B. So that'll be a good time. That's, yeah. And then, yeah, expect, I don't know, on the 17th, or what was that? The 17th? Yeah, so people in the on the Patreon can kind of expect to see the next episode coming out. Yeah, I guess the week of the 12th, and everyone else can expect to see it the week of the 19th. So, thanks everyone for a fun time today. I hope you enjoyed watching me play Anthropium and got some good stuff out of it. I encourage everyone else to play it as well. I hope kind of detailing this method of kind of going through and building different parts of a culture was cool. And you'll notice, like, as I'm going through and as I'm doing these things, I'm building tangible parts of the culture. I'm connecting it to the, you know, physical environments and, you know, the different plants and animals in the environments, you know, the sort of physical and biogeography. Then from that, we're building the intangible culture, and we are working between the basics, right? These different kinds of organization, these different structures and systems that they live under, and these intangible and tangible cultural features. Because all of these things work together in our day-to-day life. You know, all the clothing that we wear, all the stuff that we do, all has meaning to us. And culture building is trying to kind of like weave all that together, you know, create those layers of meaning and those nuances, connecting different systems together. And really the only way to do that is through these sort of iterative cycles of, you know, moving back and forth between these different levels. Uniqlo is my second religion. Yes, I like Muji. I think Muji is quite good. I always find nice stuff there. A lot of my sweaters are Muji sweaters. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me this week in Lands Unknown and venturing into Zalea to explore the ancient ancestral Zaaleans. Next week, we're going to keep doing that. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. Hyping is also helpful to let YouTube know that this is something people should check out. But if you can't, you can also leave a comment. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Oops. I hit no. Don't end the studio. I want to end the stream. Oh, you're also welcome. I always love doing this. Thank you everyone who shows up. It, you know, makes me want to keep going.